Give me something that you wish you'd known before you started the publishing journey.
The pandemic hit and changed everything.
This is Ina Christova, author of The Fabergé Girl, sharing her journey from manuscript to publication. With years in marketing, PR, and communication, Ina is diving into the real, behind-the-scenes experiences of finding the right agent, navigating the publishing world, and overcoming unexpected global events. So let's get started.
Thank you, Ina, for coming and being the first guest on my podcast to do like an interview. That's so exciting. I'm really happy to have you. So you published under Ina Christova, yes?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. First of all, thank you for having me. And yes, that's right. Ina Christova, because Christova is my maiden name. And it also, again, for branding reasons, because of the essence of the book, I thought it would be better to keep to this name.
No, but that's a really nice idea. Did anyone suggest that to you, or was that just you thinking ahead and thinking like for the content of the book?
It was just me thinking about the content of the book, and because so much is inspired by my family and family history, and my grandmother was half Russian, half Ukrainian, and I wanted to be true to the spirit of the book in a way, which is why I kept to Ina Christova.
Well, what I wanted to kind of go through with you today is basically a bit about you, a bit about your journey, about finding an agent, and being traditionally published, because that's something that lots of people really struggle with, and knowing like what went well, what went badly, those sort of things. And also because you've worked in publishing and you've worked in marketing and communications and PR and that side of stuff, I thought you're like the perfect person to give us like an overview of like all the different things that someone from marketing would actually think of when they launch a book. So I thought that would be perfect. So to start with, can you just tell us a bit about the book? Because it's always better coming from the author.
So the Fabergé Girl is about the only female jewelry artisan in the house of Fabergé in pre-revolutionary St. Petersburg. And she has the gift or the curse to turn her emotions into jewels. So you can see there's a mix of historical fiction and magical realism. I wanted to play a little bit with the folklore of the region to kind of create a work of magic, beauty, a Christmassy feel as well.
So was the original plan that you were going to publish around Christmas time then, or
yes, yeah, originally that's what I was hoping to do, because obviously it lends itself to some really nice promo, and also
yeah.
it makes people excited to read a book like this for sure.
Let's talk a bit about your story and we'll go through, because we'll go back to the design of the book and things, but I feel like that ties in more with the actual publishing side of it. So what happened first? Like, what was your journey to becoming an author, and were you already writing, or because I know you went to a competition or something?
Yeah, I mean, it's as most people who write would tell you, it's a very, 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 very long journey. And I mean, it started when I was very young. I've always written fictional stories, for myself and my family. And later on, when I was 15, I went to a competition in Bulgaria, actually, which,
Okay.
you had to write a story again. And I went not anticipating to win at all. And then I did, out of my whole country. And the prize or punishment, as I sometimes say, was to go to boarding school in the UK, which was quite an experience. I mean, I did enjoy it and I'm grateful for it. It was quite an adventure, when you're 15 and you leave home at such an early age to go to a totally different country with a totally different culture. But that was great. Then when I went to uni, hit a bit more of that creative writing, again, things that I wouldn't show many people because you feel a little bit shy at the start. And then I did write a crime novel. I don't know, I had this idea for it, And I wasn't in love with it though, so I again didn't show it to anyone, but it showed me how to get to the end of a story, and that was a really valuable essence. Then I had the idea for the Fabergé girl. I went to St. Petersburg. I spent some time in the Fabergé museum, and this gave me the opportunity to study it a little bit, and I got so inspired by my stay there because it was wonderful. It was really nice because I have a lot of family connections there. So I was like, that's such a great idea. And then I just sat down one day. It was a winter day, and I was like, I took my, nib pen and ink. I'm very old school when it comes to writing, and I wrote my first scene from what was to become the Fabergé girl. And I decided to send it off to a creative writing school to see whether they would like it. And so I sent it to Curtis Brown Creative. They have a selective course where they choose
Yeah.
15 students for it. And I was like, I'll send it off and see what happens, but I don't, hold my breath. Like, it's not very likely. And then a couple of weeks later, they were like, you've got a place. So I was really
That's
excited
amazing.
for it.
You could do the course alongside like work and things like that. Like, how did
Yeah.
it fit into your life? How often were
Yeah.
you writing compared to like everything else that you were juggling? And
time I was working for a post-production studio in London, in the movie industry. So it was really cool because I was talking to creative people during the day, and then doing my creative writing class in the evenings. Our tutor was Jake Arnott, who is a really good crime novelist, and he was telling us about the art of storytelling, different aspects of it in terms of how to craft a plot, how to build characters that are three-dimensional, and that are interesting and feel very, very lifelike. So I loved doing this, but the pandemic hit. So we were all doing this in person in London, and then all of a sudden we were all told to go home because there was a little virus going around. So it was so upsetting because we were so excited to be doing it, and we were all meeting up in the evenings doing it and talking about writing and writing the book. And just before this happened, actually 2 weeks before that, we did have a showcase class where we were introduced to a literary agent and a publisher from a big, very, very, very big publishing house. And each one of us had to give a pitch about our book in front of them, which was terrifying. But at the end of this class, the course organizer told me the agent was really interested, and so was the publisher, in your book. And they said that they both want to see it. So then, to be told just 2 weeks later, you have to go home, was quite, devastating. But it was then lockdown. There was more time.
to
And
write.
right, because I couldn't go anywhere. So I got to finish it, and then I submitted it for a writing competition, and I won. And I won representation with the agent from that competition, which was really great. But we worked on the book together for a little bit, and there was always this niggling feeling that I had that the agent from that creative writing school had expressed interest, and I didn't have the chance to explore that with her. I worked with the other agent for a little bit. He was lovely. He gave me some really nice tips on it. And then I decided, actually, I want to explore the other agent's interest because she was just so passionate about it. And he liked it, but it wasn't, this kind of folklore inspired book wasn't necessarily entirely his passion. So
Yeah.
I thought, we had a conversation, we parted very amicably, we're still friends and in touch on X, but I decided, let's go with the other agent if she loves it. So I sent the book to her, and she said that she loves it, but she wants me to rewrite aspects of it to make the romance story stronger, to build Alma's character out a little bit more. So I was really grateful for her insights, and I spent some time rewriting the story. It's called Revise and Resubmit, when you're given some notes and you work on the notes and then you send
Yeah.
the book again. So I did that. She loved it. She signed me up. We worked on the book for a year together. So she would read it through very carefully, send notes back in terms of fleshing things out more, digging into the material more. And it was such a fascinating process of working on it together, because she could see things that I could do with this book that I myself didn't see at the time yet, but they were there, and we got it ready for submission. We were all there, ready to submit, and then world events happened exactly then. It was that February, and I remember it very vividly, because I mean, you can imagine I've got also family and friends in both of the countries involved in this, and it was difficult on a personal level, very difficult, but also very difficult on this writerly level as well, because we had to put our submission on hold while we were waiting to see, what was to happen in the world. So
obviously you've worked with a couple of agents now.
Yeah.
In terms of choosing the right agent for you and how you would go about winning representation and doing those sorts of things, like if you have any tips on how people should go about those things.
The most important thing is that the agent is very, very passionate about you as an author and about your book. They need to love what you've written so that they can read it time and again. My second agent, I think she read it about 5 or 6 times from start to finish, giving me very, very, very detailed notes about it. They need to love it as much as you do, even more, because they need to sell it. So I think it's really important that you do your research very carefully, that you see the types of books that they love representing, that they love reading. It's very much a match of tastes, like you.
Yeah.
And I think that, reading books that have been published, the acknowledgement sections is really, really helpful, because you can see authors thanking their agent there, and you can see if the book that you're reading is the type of book that that's very similar to your book, then it's likely that this agent will be suitable. So that's another tip. If you enjoy a book, have a look at the acknowledgement section and see who is thanked for it. Another really helpful thing is to try and meet with agents in person if you can. They can seem a bit elusive and, very distant, and gatekeepers to the industry, and they are, but there are many ways that you can meet them as well. So Jericho Writers, they organize agent showcases, agent one-to-ones, so you can send your submissions package to them to have a look at it, and then you can have a 5 to 10 minute conversation with an agent, which I think is really helpful, because then you can see whether you have that human connection with the agent, and whether you can see yourself working with them very closely on your work. All of those things help a lot. Taking part in competitions is great as well, because they can introduce you to agents. But I think that there is a slight danger in that, because if representation is guaranteed, you might end up with an agent that you didn't choose yourself. So I think that be wary of that. It could be a really good way to be introduced to agents, but always do your research, be very careful, because it's a very important relationship actually, and it needs to work for you and for them, of course, because if they're not fully dedicated and passionate about what you're doing, they won't dedicate themselves to it.
And in terms of payment, am I right in thinking that they get a percentage of the book deal with the publisher, they don't get paid ahead of that? Or
so they do all of this work for free until they get a book deal, and that's a huge commitment. And I really admire agents, because I think they're people who love books and authors, and do a lot of it for the love of it.
It just seems like such a hard thing for people to go and do, and actually go and find an agent. So the fact that you kind of started off by winning competitions and winning representation, and then actually thought, actually you're not the right person for me, I need to go and find in a different direction and find someone else. That's so brave of you to actually voice that.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be brave in this industry, and thick-skinned. And sometimes, a bad agent is worse than no agent, because like you might stall for a long time if they are not, very passionate about you. And it's totally understood in the industry that this is the way it works as well. Because, equally, if an agent is not fully passionate about what you do, or, is not committed to working with you, or things that you're not doing that well, they might say it's not working out as well. So it's a two-way street, very much
Yeah.
so.
And in terms of like how that tends to work with publishing, obviously they're kind of pitching to a set number of publishers that they potentially have connections with, or that they think will have space and like that sort of work, and
Yeah.
they can see that working within their list. Um, is there anything that you would say to do with like finding agents that have connections with the publishers that you would actually like to work with, or is the publishing side of it not as important in your opinion?
I think it's a difficult thing to answer, because yes, it's great to get an agent who has connections, and sometimes going with somebody who is in a big agency can really help. One of the household names, they definitely get deals with all the big publishers, but again, it's not guaranteed, and maybe about 20% of the clients get a book deal, like
Mm-hmm.
because it's about the publisher falling in love with your work as much as your agent has, and you have, for them to take it on, because again, they need to love it, because they'll have to dedicate so many hours and days to
Yeah.
reading the book, because you then have to edit with your publisher as well, quite a lot before you publish. So it's a very good question, but I think it's interesting, because sometimes going with somebody who is in a big agency can be really good and can be the making of people. But sometimes it can be the opposite, because if you're not the big client for the agency, then sometimes you might get very little of the agent's time
Yeah.
and then not get the book deal. Sometimes it could be better to get an agent in a smaller agency who is very hungry and young and wants to prove, that they can sell to a big publisher. And it's not always about connections in the publishing industry. It's about the material. If the material is amazing, it will, generally get a place to
I've
be.
also been in those companies where they basically just have a stack of submissions and manuscripts from agents, and they're sat potentially on the desk of an intern or editorial assistant who doesn't have that much experience, because they need to just see, does the average person like it? And that's quite a good test of like, they're going through hundreds of different things to like find the gold, and then they'll take that to the actual commissioning editor and see if it can go somewhere. So
Yeah.
I think that's just an interesting like way of looking at it. In terms of like the agent and like sales points, like did you have to do much work to do with like how you would pitch it and things like that, or
So it was actually something that I worked on from the very start. So
okay.
it was part of the creative writing course, that we would learn how to pitch the book, because to get an agent as well, you need to pitch it to them. They need to be interested. And then the agent would need to pitch it to the publisher. The publisher would need to pitch it to all the bookshops and other retailers, and then the retailers would need to pitch it to readers, and then readers would need to pitch it to their friends and families so that they
Yeah.
buy more copies. The pitching never ends. Definitely, it was an important thing that they taught us there, and that's how I got both of the agents through the pitch of the book. And then she and I worked on comp titles, so that's also important to be able to compare your novel to what's doing well on the market
Mm-hmm.
already, because you say, for example, the Gone Girl meets Harry Potter. I mean, that would be a funny book, but it's quite important to have a comparison title, because you then show that there is a niche in the market, and a need, for this type of novel. If it's something totally out there that you can't compare, it can still sell quite a lot, to be honest, because it could be groundbreaking and totally new and fresh. So, I mean, as we say, nobody in publishing knows anything actually, because you can't predict things, and that's the beauty of it. Somebody might create something totally new and groundbreaking, and they might be told it's something that won't work because it's weird. Like, who writes a book from 15 points of view? But it might actually be done so well that
it's like an exception to the rule. Like there's general rules that tend to work, but there's always those exceptions and those outliers. And you obviously then were kind of coming up with a pitch and like sales points and those sorts of comparisons and things like that.
Yeah.
As you were writing, so not getting too far down the line of how it's going to actually play out. You just had, because I guess you start when you're writing to have like a bit of a framework. You're like, the start and end points, you're kind of stringing those all together. And then when you're moving into the actual publishing side of things, like how did that journey go? Because obviously you're going through the editorial side of things, you're going to go through the actual design of the book cover and things like that. So if you could talk a little bit more about what happens when you get to that point and were there any problems along that side of things?
Yeah, so this was again interesting in my case because of the political situation with what was happening at the time. So I first had interest from the publisher I'd met, and from a couple of others as well that I'd had conversations with. But things got intense in February of that year, because it was exactly then that we were about to hit the send button with my agent. I had worked on the book for, the whole summer the year before and through the Christmas break as well, obviously as a hobby, because I do have my full-time job, and as I said, it's something I can only do in the evenings for an hour because it is so intense. Yeah, it got to February and things happened, which meant that, in publishing, timing is everything. It's about capturing the zeitgeist, being on time, being timely and interesting at the time of submission. At the time of submission, it wasn't appropriate to publish something set in St. Petersburg and talking about Russian folklore. And even though, of course, my own family has connections to both sides of this story, still it wasn't sensitive. It wasn't the right thing to do. And usually when you get a publishing deal in the UK, publishers publish a big article about it on the bookseller like magazine, and they announce the deal, and it was just not the right time from a PR perspective for this kind of thing to happen. So we decided to put it on hold for a bit. And I started working on another novel, which it is hard. That's why it's not for the faint-hearted. You have to, you fall down and you have to get up very quickly. It's something that I pride myself on being capable of in general life as well. Get knocked down big time and then getting back up. So that's what I had to do. And it was even harder because I had started, they always tell you when you have the first book done, you need to start writing the second one that's in a similar genre, similar feel, so that, because usually you get a 2-book deal, so you need to be then very quickly ready with the second one. So I was already writing the feminist retelling of the life of Sophia, who was the sister of Peter the Great, and
again not timely,
could not be more inappropriate for this time. And it was actually quite creepy because on the day of the conflict started, I was writing a chapter called War, which was about the first efforts in that direction of that country. So it was really I was so spooked out that I didn't write for a couple of months after that, because it was just like, what? I can't believe it. That's so weird. Then I started writing the Oxford Handbook of Murder, which is a humorous crime novel. And I started writing that, and it also got shortlisted for a couple of pretty big writing awards, and it won first place at the London Novel Writing Competition, which was really really nice. I then, my agent and I had a conversation about what we wanted to do with the Fabergé girl. And given all the effort we had both put into it, even though it wasn't appropriate to send it out to publishers in the UK, I thought that I still wanted to pursue it, because, it's still not quite the right time, to be honest, but I just couldn't let it die. And we had a conversation with my agent, and I thought, why don't we try Bulgaria, which is where I'm from originally. My country has seen the worst of the aggressor. We were very much impacted by this culture as well. And I thought that publishers back home would be perhaps more understanding of the true nuance of the book as well, because it's not bigging up this culture in any way. It's just talking about the good and the bad as well. And it's actually set during such a pivotal time in Russian history, where things could have turned out either way. And they went down a bad route, in my opinion. Again, there are many opinions about it, but I felt that the book explored the nuance of the situation in a way that to me is not offensive, and to me just adds to the conversation in a way that's respectful. I've got family and friends in both countries, again, so I wouldn't want to publish something that would offend anyone. So basically went out on submission in Bulgaria to the top couple of publishers there, and Istok Zapad, which is one of the big fiction publishers there. Istok Zapad means east-west, actually, and their main, mission is to bridge the gap between East and West, which I think is really fascinating, and actually exactly what I was trying to do, funnily enough. So it was almost like destiny that they wanted it, and it really worked very, very well with them.
Do you think that they differed in anything they did to do with like the approach to actually the editing and like design styles and things like that a UK publisher might have done differently, or do you think it's much the same?
Big time. I think mostly in terms of the design of the book cover, because I think in the UK you have very little say as an author. You can sometimes, and I've seen it from the other side as well, as because I did used to work in an intern in publishing at the start of my career. So basically, like, I know that you're told this is your cover, and sometimes if you really hate it, they might be willing to do something about it. But it totally makes sense why they are not necessarily willing to compromise with the cover, because of course they've got their marketing departments, they have a strong feeling about what they want, and there's a monetary, it's money related too, because they can't keep on changing it. Like, makes sense.
I have got to say that working from like a co-edition point of view, so that's where you basically sell the rights to each different country.
Yeah.
The difference between the design aesthetics of the UK and the US is like staggeringly different. The UK tends to be like, even in terms of like the topics and the types of illustrations and images you can put in the books, like there's a big difference. And the US tends to be like a little bit further behind in those kind of trends. And obviously like a lot more influence to do with like religion and things like that. And then obviously you have to then account for potentially publishing in like China, then they censor things. So then you have to work out like, is that okay? Or do we have to send it somewhere that is not going to enforce that because we don't believe that that is true? Yeah. So there are like a lot of nuances of like why particular publishers know that for their market, this particular thing is better. And I have seen like authors do their own covers. So yeah, but I do agree that you should love the cover of your book as an author. Like it's an important thing, and it's something that has taken you so long to do, especially with the fiction novels. Like they've taken a long time. Even just with you working with your agent, that's such a long time to like go over it and like lovingly bring it to life. So
That's for sure. And I don't envy any artist that has to do this because it's so hard. I mean, they read the book as well, and they have to, try to represent the author's ideas, through an image. And that's so difficult. I mean, they're incredible, incredibly talented people. I have so much respect for them. And yeah, the Bulgarian publisher, they presented me with an option, initially. And it was created by a really talented and famous Bulgarian artist, who is really fantastic, Boris Stoilov. And I loved his work, but I just felt that maybe it wouldn't work for the UK market and internationally. And we decided to keep it for the Bulgarian market. But the publisher, they were very open to me then choosing an artist to work with, which I was super grateful for. And because I'm a huge fan of Alejandra Penaloza, who is a Mexican artist living in Berlin. I'd admired her work for a very long time. And yeah, I just love the colors that she uses. They're very vibrant, very Mexican. And there's something so vibrant and colorful that's really similar to colors used in Russian folklore as well, that I felt that it would be a very interesting collaboration. So I was in touch with her directly, which again I don't think happens that often with traditional publishers. And I asked her if she would be willing to do it, and she said yes, so it was super exciting. And then I had another really awesome collaboration with her. Alejandra, she read the book from cover to cover, made notes on it, and presented me with a couple of different options. I loved all of them, and felt like, again, she knew the book really well. And then I sent it to the publisher. They loved it as well, and they published it. Here it is again. I really love the colors that she used. They're very suitable for the subject matter, and I loved the attention to detail, because there's a little firebird, and a Fabergé egg, and a ballerina in the window, and a little cat. And she's kind of represented also the very way that she has depicted the house of Fabergé is very similar to the way it looked in reality. Done research into that, so I was really
Oh, that's
grateful.
amazing.
Yeah, she'd gone like the extra mile. But yeah, it was really special, because Istok Zapad, they were so open to this, and they were so encouraging of that also. And it's really nice to start from home, in a way.
No, that sounds amazing. And it all just sounds kind of almost destined to be, really, like from all those connections. And just, are there any tips that you would say, or like things that were unexpected to do with like that side of the publishing process, and even to do with like how you had to obviously go from having a set publisher in mind to then branching out and finding another one? Like, what sort of tips would you give people that are looking to like go into trying to get their books published?
I would say the most important thing is don't give up and own your narrative. That's a tip for life as well as for publishing. I think that it's such a tough industry, that there are so many ups and downs. When I was told by my course manager at that big creative writing school, a top publisher and an agent are super interested, you think, wow, that's it. It's amazing. And it really was. And it's so encouraging to hear that. But then to go from that to, working on the book for the whole of the pandemic, and to have it, that situation happen was very tough. It was all about not giving up, and trying to think of other opportunities, keeping an eye out on things that I could still do, to get it out there in a traditional way. Because, and there are many different opinions, and every route is totally valid. Some people are very keen to self-publish, and that's totally fine. For me, it was just always my dream to be traditionally published. And that was why I was, so keen to try and find another route to that. And so definitely don't give up. Keep an eye out for opportunities. Talk to other authors, talk to publishers and agents. they're not as scary as they might seem, because we always think of them as those gatekeepers to this dusty tower of publishing. And they are gatekeepers for a reason, because, of course, they want to publish good things. And there are so many things that are sent their way. But don't be afraid of them. Talk to them, ask them questions, reach out to other authors on X or TikTok these days. Goodness me.
I mean, I guess the people in publishing tend to be just really nice people.
Yeah.
It's very rare to come across someone that's like malicious in publishing.
Exactly.
So and I guess that leads us really nicely just into marketing and going into like your experience and the things that you've done and like how they kind of relate to publishing and like how you might try and use some of the principles that you've learned through your work into how you would publicize your book and things like that.
So just for context, I used to do marketing and PR in publishing initially, and then in entertainment, in the movie industry, and then in tech as well. So, and most recently PR and comms, which I really enjoy because, it's possible for you to be, depending on where you're working, you're able to be hopefully creative as well during the day, which I think is really cool. I'm at the moment somewhere that's very, exciting and creative, with a very cool, fresh brand, which I love, a really quirky brand, an amazing brand. Anyway, I think in terms of what, I've learned from my job in terms of marketing and PR is that you have to be brave and try different platforms. For example, I was quite shy with TikTok and scared of it. Not shy, scared, terrified, because it's like a platform for another generation, and you look at it and the videos just make you feel like you're schizophrenic. It's just like so crazy fast, and sometimes I don't understand what's going on. I was so scared for a while, and then I decided to approach a book talker. Again, not being afraid to ask. So I asked her for some help and a tutorial, and she showed me tips in terms of what to do when I'm doing a TikTok video. So I've recently started my author TikTok channel, and I'm not afraid. And X as well. Initially, Twitter was a bit of a different, platform that I didn't know how to use, and now I know how to use it really well. It's also about not being afraid to put yourself out there, I guess, because the thing is with authors, we can be quite, I describe myself as an introverted extrovert. I've got both aspects in that I love talking to people. I can sometimes, if not in the right environment, really close up as well. So authors can be a little bit on the shy spectrum, and they can feel like putting their work out there is an intrusion, is something that they shouldn't be doing. And I think the marketing PR person in me is like, no, actually, let's get it out there. Let's go, and talk on a podcast, or let's have some articles published about it. Let's post about it on social. Like, I don't have any, worries about that. And I think that's what authors should be aware of, that they're not really intruding. They have a right to, they have their right to promote their book, and to talk about it, because if they don't, nobody will know about it. So that's, an important tip. And definitely don't be afraid to try new formats. The thing about marketing advertising is that there are so many new platforms out there that if you don't try them out, you are missing out. Book talk is big. Even publishers like Pan Macmillan have stopped their X activity because X has gone downhill massively, in terms of algorithm functionality. It's all about TikTok now in the book world, and Instagram.
Yeah.
The thing is, book talk can be scary for many people still, even publishers. I know a lot of publishers who are not embracing it fully yet. But Instagram is a platform that many people use. So don't be afraid, go there, take nice photos of your book, with nice, backgrounds. I think that always helps. Don't be afraid to go on a blog tour as well. There are many ways that you can, participate in a blog tour. Reviewers read your book and publish it, publish the review on their blog, and then tweet about it, post on Instagram. So all of those things are important. And events as well. I did a couple of really nice events. One was at Blackwell's, and it was amazing to do a presentation of my book there. It's one of my favorite bookshops in the world. I also did one in the Lake District, which was
lovely.
phenomenal, in a place that was called Theatre by the Lake, and it was exactly like that, like a beautiful theatre building by a beautiful lake in the Lake District. It was such a writerly place to have an event. It was part of the Word on the Water festival in Keswick. So that was really special, a really nice memory to have. So yeah, just don't be afraid. Don't think that you have to, being a writer means that you have to stay in a dark room, because, you need to promote your book.
And in terms of like building a brand and choosing the platforms, and because engagement is actually as important as posting in the first place, a lot of the time you kind of have to be active on the platform for the algorithm to actually push what you put out there anyway. So that can take a lot of time. But would you say that you've been more in control of that than the agent or the publisher, because that all falls on you to actually do the active engagement and coming up with the content and things like that?
Yeah, that's entirely up to you, because the agent and the publisher have so many other authors to look after. They don't have the time to help you with that. It doesn't, again, it's just like an out of... I am a big believer, though, that you can always make time if you're organized. And I think that if you say to yourself, right, at 7 p.m. I'm going to post on these platforms, and you prepare your post, it's not that hard. You can also pre-schedule things with
definitely.
you have Hootsuite, which I do. So sometimes I'd be sitting there at the weekend going, I'm gonna schedule this posting to go out next week at this time, because I want to talk to people at this time. So I think that's definitely very doable, and it definitely falls on you, because the agent and the publisher have so many books to look after that they can't really realistically do that for everyone.
And in terms of like book launches and things like that, like, did you do anything to do with that?
Yeah, so it was in Blackwell's, it was during that event that I launched it. Yeah, so that was my book launch. It was great to launch it there. And I had, family and friends there. It wasn't a huge book launch. I'm hoping to do a bigger one for the next one. It was still great, and it's a lovely celebration of your book. Again, it's something that you arrange yourself rather than the publisher. It's always that way, but also that's really nice because you get to do it the way that you want it.
And did you do things like building a launch team and things like that? Because that's one of the big things that I've been kind of teaching people to do, is like just reaching out to people that have said like that they'll help you. So asking for the help initially, just reaching out to your audience and saying like, I'm going to be launching this. Is anyone interested in helping me? And then scheduling like when they'll do reviews. Because if people have like said that they will, then you can always then follow up and just basically like time it so that every single day for a week, say, that is your book launch week, that everyone's releasing things. Do you have any other tips like to do with planning, those sorts of like additional things to kind of drum up activity and like potentially even lower prices on certain platforms, things like that?
Yeah, no, definitely. A launch plan is important. I think bloggers are very important, reviewers, because they help you to promote your book via their own websites. And so making sure that you have a list of relevant bloggers who are interested in your genre is very important. I did that, and I sent review copies to them. And they, sent really nice reviews mostly, which was really good. I also worked with FMCM. They were, excited to work with me on this book, which is great because they're very selective. And they helped me also, which was really great, to promote it to their own contacts, to people that they knew. I think definitely building relationships with booksellers is also really important, because ultimately they're the ones that will be selling it to the public. In terms of social media, also definitely having a social media plan. You can do really fun things like cover reveals, building anticipation for the book, reading excerpts of it across the different platforms. You can also do cross promotion with other authors who are in your genre. They can promote it from their social channels. So there are quite a lot of different tactics like this on social media and other platforms that you can use to drum up interest.
Have you done anything to do with like email marketing? Partly because obviously socials is like you don't own the audience there, and at any time your platform could just be shut down and you wouldn't be able to do anything about it. So do you do that, or would you encourage that?
I would encourage that. If, the thing is, I didn't do it myself. I think because I see social platforms, as the better channel. But email marketing can work as well. Of course, I mean, it's still a very valid channel. It's just that because personally I get inundated with so many emails, and I'm just like, delete them all when it's anything promotional. That's why I just didn't feel like doing it for my own book. But I've seen other authors do it. Some have newsletter emails that they send out regularly, like Susan Chapman Stokes, who writes in my genre. She wrote a really nice retelling of the Pandora myth some years ago. So she has a very interesting newsletter, which is actually quite nice and not overly promotional, because it has some interesting tips about writing and really nice excerpts from her work, I think. So you can make it interesting and not just promotional as well, if you choose to go down that route. But if you don't choose to do it, it's fine. I didn't, and it didn't hamper, but people have different preferences as well in terms of what channels they personally like. So, if email marketing is for you, definitely do it.
Okay. And we're kind of just wrapping up now, but I just wanted to quickly ask you, as this is kind of what I'm doing, tips on like building your like author brand, maintaining like authenticity online, and like where you see like your brand going as you progress, because obviously you've had to kind of move from your original's kind of genre of writing into like a more thriller crime kind of area, and how you see those things kind of working together.
It's a very, very good question. I think that, Ina Christova, who wrote The Fabergé Girl, will always, have historical with, slight magical touches, as a main focus. But I think that, and I've got a different name for the crime.
Okay.
Because that's how it works. I mean, exactly, because when you build a brand as the author of this type of book, you can't then, I mean, you could, but it is a little bit funny. So I go by Adriana, for my crime fiction writing. So I've got both of those different names. It makes me sound crazy, but writing people are, I mean, you hear voices of characters in your head, you then have different personalities. But no, I mean, it is just because of this whole brand, side of things, that you're usually advised to have a name for each genre that you're writing in.
Yeah.
Luckily, I won't be writing in too many more, I think.
And do you think at any point you might consider like self-publishing, or do you think that traditional publishing is just the route for you?
I'm probably held back by the fact that I come from a family of literary snobs. Like, my dad is a professor of philosophy. He's published traditionally like a lot of books. I mean, he's got many. My granddad is a translator, always traditionally published as well. So I just we've got a lot of family friends who are either famous writers in Bulgaria and Russia, or academics. I think there's a slight snobbery, in that one
Yeah.
when it comes to publishing, and traditional publishing is associated with prestige because obviously an agent has edited the book many times with you, then the publisher has done it, so there's an expectation of quality.
Quality.
But having said that, so many authors have done extremely well with self-publishing, and I mean, Sarah J. Maas, for example, she started as a self-published author. Colleen Hoover as well. I mean, there are different opinions about these works, but like, I love Sarah J. Maas, for example. So I think she's done extremely well. So there's nothing, I don't think that self-publishing is bad at all. It could be fantastic. And I mean, publishing can sometimes be very cutthroat and frustrating. I've got friends who have won some of the biggest prizes, writing
Yeah.
prizes ever. Like one of them did last year, and somehow the book was turned down. Like, you have to be prepared for so much heartbreak. And I think self-publishing gives people this democratic right to get their work out there. So I really respect it. I think I've just got this thing drummed into me, because of my family. But I definitely would encourage anyone who wants to do it to explore this route, because it can be very good and democratic and lucrative as well. But if you do prefer the traditional route, I would say don't give up, because it's possible. It's not impossible. It's definitely doable. And the only way of not doing it is to not go for it, and to not
Yeah.
persevere. That's the one certain way of not getting published, that's for sure.
Okay, let's do some very quick answer, like last few things. So what's your number one tip for authors?
Find what you are passionate about. I'm a very passionate person in life, about everything, but like, find what you're really passionate about, because then you will be flying through those pages, and the reader will feel the love that you've put into it all.
And do you have a number one book that you would recommend to anyone interested in like marketing or like the skill behind like writing?
So controversially, I don't generally love businessy books. Like, I tend to learn about marketing from social channels, from
Okay.
creators talking about it. But in terms of one book, there is, Building a Story Brand by Donald
Yeah.
Miller. And I find that less, because it's more about, storytelling through marketing. I think some of the books that are purely about business and marketing really put me off somehow.
No,
But
the Story Brand is very, very good book. Yeah.
it is good, yeah, for sure.
Give me something that you wish you'd known before you started the publishing journey.
That it's a roller coaster. You'll be up, you'll be down, you'll be sideways, you'll be, yeah, thrown in many different directions, and you have to stay cool, keep your cool, never give up. I mean, life throws so many curveballs. Generally, I've had so many thrown at me recently, and over the course of my life generally, and I always get back up. Like, when I fall down, I get back up, and I think always do that.
And last one, you mentioned about learning a lot about character development and story writing tips from the courses that you took and from the agent refining things. What was the most surprising thing that you learned from that you wouldn't have known before?
Think a lot of things about dialogue that I didn't know, like how to make dialogue read natural. Like, it can be very difficult to write things that sound like a real person would say them. So, a lot of interesting tips about how to do role plays with your characters as if you are, them, so that you can impersonate them and make your characters sound natural. Doing questionnaires about your characters as well. So I interview them before I write anything. I've got the questionnaire for each character with things like, what are you most afraid of? What do you love most in the world? If you could go out on a date, where would you go? Things like this, that give you different sort of aspects of the character, and you get to know them in your mind before you start writing about them, because otherwise they can be very flat on the page. And that's something that all writers that I know struggle with.
And do you think you're going to stick with the publisher that you have now, or should we be expecting potentially different publishers to be stepping in for the next book?
It's a very good question. I love Istog Zapad, and they've done such an amazing job, and they're such nice people. I'd love to work with them again if they'd have me. But it could be somebody else as well, because, especially for the crime one, haven't explored it yet because I haven't edited it yet. I've written a first draft. So when it gets to that stage, I think I'll try potentially to see who is interested in it. And it could be Istog Zapad, but it could be somebody else.
I guess as well, because it's got Oxford ties, like you might have different requirements and like needs for like that sort of thing. That's so amazing. Thank you so much. I'm going to let you plug your book a little bit and tell us where to find it and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so here it is again. You can find it on the W.H. Smith's website or on Amazon, as well as some selected bookshops across the country. I don't have the full list of them yet, but I will shortly. But definitely online, on both of those sites. You can get it there. And expect the movie. I mean, I'm joking, but not joking. I love to write in a very sort of in a way that's keeping cinematography in mind. So like I try to make it very rich in imagery. So I always joke that I want to make it into, especially because I did work in the movie industry for a little bit before the pandemic hit and changed everything.
Yeah.
So I do really like that world of storytelling. And how cool would that be?
Oh, it'd be amazing. And I will try and link all your like social media like links below and things like that. So just leave them with me when you end the call. But thank you so much. I'm going to end the recording there, and hopefully we'll talk again soon about the next book.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me, Abby. Really nice to speak with you.